Hello everyone, I'm the Pesky Poet, and I run the website peskypoetry.co.uk. You probably already knew that if you found me here on YouTube, and if you didn't, welcome to Pesky Poetry. So this YouTube channel is my new outlet for giving you content from the website in a video format. It will be readings and news and maybe some exciting upcoming events around pesky poetry. So let me give you a quick background about myself. In 2010, I was identified as being dyslexic, and those people who did the identification process asked me, what do you want to do with your life? Now, when I said I want to be a writer, they heavily advised against it, claiming that writing isn't for dyslexic people. This shook me. This stopped me from writing for a good couple of months, after which a group of friends got together and we started writing a sci-fi novel. Now, that sci-fi novel never got completed. It's about 95% complete and has sadly been mothballed, but it showed me I could write. In 2012, while watching the London Olympics with my grandparents, I set up a site called Creatively Becoming Different. It was my experimental way of handing out my work on the internet to see if other people thought my work was worth reading, and I slowly amassed followers. Now, at the time, the first piece of work I can remember clearly was a poem about Tom Daly and the diving, so that probably gives you some gauge of how Creatively Becoming Different started. But it evolved over time, and new pieces were added to it of discursive writing, sci-fi, but ultimately it was just an experiment to see whether or not people liked my work, and I found out people did. So in 2016, after my job in my industry of choice started to settle down and I realised I was bedding in properly, I thought, I'm going to take this writing seriously. And I wrapped up Creatively Becoming Different, removing all pages from the site. The site is still there with one last message on it, a thank you to the readers and followers that made Creatively Becoming Different. But in May 2016, I created Pesky Poetry to make it a bit more serious. Now, a lot of people ask why I didn't stick with the other forms of creative writing, and the simple truth is, poetry is the simplest form, to me, of written language. And as a dyslexic person that can't read very quickly, a small poem is often the best way to get something exciting into my brain. Now, I grant you there are long poems out there, such as Homer's Iliad, and I do struggle to get through them, so I love lovely short poems by some of the great artists out there like Norman McCaig. So, my way of writing was to write poetry, and, as such, I went with the name The Pesky Poet. Now, taking pesky poetry more seriously has meant that I have wanted to publish work and broaden my horizons. Sadly, in 2018, I lost my father to alcoholism. He was 51 years old. He was one of my greatest inspirations and a man that taught me a lot about life. And so, he gave me the inspiration to write my first anthology. And in 2019, exactly a year after he passed, my first anthology was published and dedicated to him, which was titled Pesky Poetry, an Anthology. Now, he sadly never got to read the work, but I know that he would have been proud of the work that was dedicated to him. And in the same vein, sadly, in May this year, I found out my grandfather was terminal while I was writing my second book. My second book came about because of a mishap. At the end of 2019, after publishing my first book, I was going back through some of the old poems published on Creatively Becoming Different, and I came across an old poem about feeling melancholy. And I realised I'd made one of the most obvious spelling mistakes of my poetry writing, and I'd misspelled melancholy, M-O-L-L-E-N-C-O-L-L-I-E. Almost a half-fruit, half-animal hybrid, rather than the sensation of feeling melancholy. And after a quick walk with my partner, it gave the spark of inspiration for the title of Melancholy Ravings of a Dyslexic Poet. And with the collaboration with one of my friends, Matthew J. Hill of The Caterpillar Shivered, the melancholy was born into a piece of artwork, which can be seen on the front cover of the book. Now, while writing this book, I realised that I was not going to keep my grandfather forever, and sadly he did pass in July this year. And his passing struck me quite hard, and so the second book was dedicated to him, with a poem entitled Dedication. The poem reads, "The world is darker, the air is colder, now that you are not here. I will go on with all that you taught me without fear. You will be missed each and every day until we meet again." And as such, Melancholy Ravings of a Dyslexic Poet was dedicated to my late grandfather. So that's a bit of a background about me as a pesky poet and pesky poetry as a whole, how it came about. Let me give you a bit more of a sum up of what's happening now. So at this point in time I have 2 published works, Melancholy Ravings of a Dyslexic Poet and Pesky Poetry, an Anthology, which can both be purchased on Amazon and via other publication sites. That also bears the creation of some merchandise, which includes the Pesky Bear and bears featuring the Melancholy, plus some other forms of merchandise such as bags, as the one above and here. And these pieces of merchandise are how I fund Pesky Poetry and make it more professional. Pesky Poetry is self-sufficient as of now, and it can only remain self-sufficient with your support. So as one of the last things I want to say in this video, I want to say thank you to my followers, subscribers, readers who have helped support Pesky Poetry and made it the site it is. So last but not least, I want to point out some links in the description below. You will find a link to my YouTube page, which is here, my Facebook page, my Twitter page, Instagram and Tumblr. You will also find a link to peskypoetry.co.uk where you can find some of my poetry works published. I will also put a link to the website where you can purchase some of the merchandise and a link to both books. If you feel that you want to purchase to help keep funding Pesky Poetry, thank you very much. If not, thank you for just viewing and reading. Even a subscribe means a lot to me. So until the next video, thank you very much.